Hello and welcome back to This Is Me, It's All About You, episode 3 of the Tina Willis podcast. And I am so grateful that you're here with me on this journey, guys. And today I want to talk about something that completely changed my life. And it wasn't just the burnout I had in corporate life over 6 years ago. It wasn't the circumstances around that. It wasn't the career. It wasn't the income or anything like that. Do you know what it was? It was this. It was my mindset. I realized over the past 6.5 years, since I've been working on myself, that your life doesn't change when your circumstances change. Your life changes when you change. And I know back then I was so negative in so many ways. I came from a place of fear, of doubt, of insecurity. I didn't like myself very much at times. I was always saying yes when I really wanted to say no. I was always saying no when I really wanted to say yes. And I know that can be a really difficult thing to hear because it's so much easier to believe that your happiness and your confidence and success is controlled by everything that happens around you. But here's the thing, life isn't happening to you. Life is happening for you. And everything we go through in life is not because of our external circumstances, it's because of what's in here. It's because of the stories we keep telling ourselves over and over and over again from past events, from the way we've been brought up, from life events. It's not the job or the money or the economy or other people. It comes from here. It comes from our perception of what we think about all that. So, if I said to you, the greatest transformation begins the moment you stop looking outside of yourself and start looking within, what would you say? I didn't always think this way. For years, I believed that working harder, earning more, achieving more, getting more recognition meant that I would be fulfilled in life. What an absolute load of baloney that was. You know, the truth was, I was always chasing that external solution to an internal problem. The real issue lay with me, and no amount of success would ever fix that unless I started working on me. And the biggest mind shift I ever had, the mindset shift I ever had that changed my life was realizing that I was responsible for my experience of life. What I thought, I created, and I was not responsible for everything that happened to me, but I was responsible for how I responded to it. Okay. I was responsible for my thoughts. I was responsible for my focus, my actions, my energy, my beliefs about myself. And once I understood that, everything began to change. I started paying attention to the stories I was telling myself. I started working on myself. And those stories were like, I'm too old. I'm a has-been at 57. I'm not confident enough. I'm not good with technology. What if I fail? This was the things that would go through my head over 6.5 years ago before I started my business. What if I fail? What will people think of me? Oh, that was the biggest one. What will people think of me? Who gives a stuff what people think of you? They're too busy worrying about themselves. Does that sound familiar? And the problem wasn't that these thoughts appeared. The problem was what I dealt with them, and the problem was that I believed them, you know? And what we believe becomes our reality. Think about that for a moment. So I started learning, and over the past couple of days, the past couple of episodes, I've given you some books, but the ones that really, really changed me from the very beginning, that helped me on my journey to where I've become now, are these simple books. Oops, I've just dropped one. Apologies, but all these books, they're not perfect. And these made a big difference in my life. And they're all by the same author, and they're all by Rhonda Byrne. The one I've just dropped is that, oh, it's the Secret Daily Teachings. But these made a difference. The magic, the power, the secret, the countdown to riches. I recommend these to anybody who's starting out on a mindset journey, guys. And that's what happened. That was the beginning of my journey, you know. And I want to ask you something. You know, what we believe becomes our reality. Think about that for a moment. And I want to ask you, how many decisions have you made based on fear rather than on possibility? Okay, I see it regularly in my online business. I share an opportunity that people can change their lives, and people say no because of fear when it could actually change their life. It could actually create something so possible for them, you know? But how many dreams have you talked yourself out of? Think about that. How many opportunities, like the one I've just mentioned, have you based on fear rather than on possibility? I know I did at the very beginning, but I made that decision because I knew I couldn't stay stuck where I was, you know? And then I started asking myself different questions. What if it works? What if I'm capable of more than I think I am? What if the life I want is absolutely 100% possible for me? And that simple shift in these thoughts changed everything about my perception of who I was. So instead of focusing on what could go wrong, I started focusing on the endless possibilities of what could go right. You know, instead of looking for evidence that I couldn't do something, I started looking for evidence that I actually could. I could win. I could succeed. You know, and little by little, my confidence grew. Step by step. Not because I suddenly became fearless overnight, you know, but because I kept taking action despite the fear. And when I started doing that, guess what happened? I quit corporate life. I became a successful online business owner. I changed my life because I changed my mindset, you know? And one of the greatest lessons I've learned is that confidence doesn't come first. Action comes first. Confidence follows. You know, most people wait until they feel confident before they take action. All right, but that's backwards. That's completely backwards. You become confident because you've taken action. You know, you become stronger because you're facing all the challenges that life throws at you and you act a different way to them. You become resilient because you overcome difficult things. And here's one thing I wanted to mention to you. Have you ever looked at situations in your life? Maybe it's something that's really traumatic that's happened to you. Maybe you've been scammed in life. I know I have. But maybe you've been, you know, maybe something's happened to you that you thought, oh my God, why did this happen to me? You know, I mean, over 7 years ago, we were scammed, but we came through it. And then I found that legitimate online business that I am still doing now, that I love with a passion and purpose every day. But if that one thing hadn't happened to me then, I wouldn't be here where I am now. I always look at that. If I hadn't had burnout and became in corporate life, I wouldn't be where I am now. So I want you to think about all those little events in your life that have brought you where you are today. And think about there's always something positive in a negative. All right. And when I look at the woman I was 6.5 years ago, I don't recognize her anymore because I've become something different. I've become more of who I really am. And the thing is, you know, we all want results in life, but we don't realize the most vital thing, that you have to change your identity of the person who you think you are to the person who you really are. And quit telling yourself those stories, you know. And the thing is, the fear is always still there sometimes. We're never going to get rid of that. You always have problems. but it's how you handle those problems to create the solutions. You know, it's the doubts will always show up occasionally, but they no longer get to control me. The doubts and the fears and the insecurity no longer have power over me. They don't control my decisions. I flip the switch, and that's the difference. So I want to leave you with a question today. I want to leave you with, what story have you been telling yourself that's keeping you stuck? And what would happen if you stopped believing it? You know, I want you to take a moment, write it down. Write it down, guys. I want you to challenge that thought, because your quality of life is often determined by the quality of the story you're telling it, you know? So if today's episode resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. Just send me a message, leave a comment. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with somebody who might hear it. And if you'd like to go deeper into these conversations, read my book. This is me, but it's all about you. Because remember, you're more capable than you think. You're more resilient than you realize. And your future does not have to look like your past. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you all soon.